in this world that we live in, it's like a roller coaster. A lot of times we go for distraction because we don't want to feel whatever we're feeling. And so to me, this is problematic because we don't learn a skill set of being able to tolerate difficult emotions like boredom. Mindfulness can teach us how to be present with these feelings.
Every day, our minds race from one thing to another: notifications, stress, deadlines, distractions. But what if slowing down is actually the key to thinking clearer, feeling calmer, and living better? Today, we're talking about mindfulness with Diana Winston, the director at UCLA Mindful. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm, as you said, the director of UCLA Mindful. We're the Mindfulness Education Center at UCLA Health. I've been teaching mindfulness for, I don't know, about 30 years or something like that. And I started out actually teaching with teenagers. I wrote a book for teens at the time on mindfulness and have been continuing to teach for many, many years. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. So, before we dive deeper into mindfulness, I'd love to learn more about your personal journey. Can you share a little bit about your story and what first led you towards mindfulness and meditation?
Sure. I had just graduated from college and I didn't know what I was doing with myself. I had been an exchange student in Thailand in college, but I didn't get into the Buddhist meditation practices. I just was kind of doing other things when I was there. But when I went back the second time, I went to Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama is his government in exile, and I ended up hearing all these Buddhist meditation teachers, which at the time I was very skeptical of, and I wasn't sure why that would really apply to me. But I don't know if it was peer pressure. I found myself getting really interested. And once I got interested, I ended up going on some meditation retreats, and I just felt like this practice of meditation is so incredible. And I learned so much about myself, and it was just really fascinating to understand my mind and also to help me with anxiety. So, anyway, I got hooked, and then I went to Thailand and I started practicing there. And then basically spent the next maybe decade living in meditation centers and retreat centers in the US and in Asia. And I ended up even spending a year as a Buddhist nun in a monastery, and then ultimately came back and started becoming a teacher.
Oh, okay. That's really cool. So, was there a specific moment or experience that really changed things for you when you were out in Thailand or in these different places that you went to?
The big moment where I decided that I really wanted to learn to meditate was happened early on when I was listening to some meditation teachers talk about how in this world that we live in, it's like a roller coaster. There's all these ups and all these downs, and that can't control all of what's happening. But what we can do is shift how we relate to everything. So, what she was talking about was that if you look at life, it's like these opposites that come together. There's pleasure and there's pain. So, even though we really want pleasure, we end up with pain. It's this roller coaster. And then we look for, we want to gain things, but then we lose things and we go back and forth, and people get famous and then they lose their fame, right? There's that. These have had specific, there's a specific teaching of, it's called the worldly winds, the four truths about the world. But what happens is when we have the good ones, we're happy. But then the good ones can disappear, and then we start running after them. What happened? Why are they here? And I don't want to have the difficult ones. And when I heard this teaching, I was like, okay, this is my life. Is there any way to not be on this roller coaster all the time? And what she said is, yes, it's called meditation. And what you do is you learn to develop a mind that can be okay no matter what is happening with the ups and downs of life. And that just completely was a moment that changed my life. And I said, I want that.
Okay, so meditation isn't really just about calming down and reducing anxiety, it's about building up resilience against life's challenges, right?
It's about a lot of things, calming and working with anxiety and helping you have emotional regulation and cultivate positive emotions. All of that is part of it. And there's a lot of good science behind that showing that these things happen, just general stress reduction. But when you dive deeply into it, there's so much more. It's really a tool of self awareness and self understanding where wisdom and compassion can grow and can give us the capacity to handle life in ways we might never have expected.
So, for teens listening, how would you define mindfulness in a simple and realistic way?
I define it as paying attention to our present moment experiences with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be with that experience. So, if you were to look into your mind any point in the day, you'd notice that you're lost in the past, thinking about things, replaying them. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Or you're planning for the future, obsessing, maybe going into the worst case scenario. What if I fail this test? What are my parents going to say? This is right. Our minds do. They go back and forth between the two. Mindfulness is the invitation right here, right now, to a place of ease and well being where we're not lost in those ruminations and difficult thoughts, but we can come into our bodies and be present. And that can lead to a whole host of really positive things, like I just mentioned.
I was reading Fully Present, your book, and one thing that really stood out to me was the idea that so many people go through life on autopilot without even realizing it. So, for teenagers whose minds are always jumping between school and phones and future plans, what does being present actually look like in everyday life?
Well, let's talk about what being on autopilot is like, because it's the opposite. And you're right. And it's not just teens. People are so busy and rushing around and we're on our phones all the time. And autopilot is when you go through life and you kind of miss your life. It's like you wake up the next morning and think, what just happened? It's because we're so busy and so much responsibility and you pressure to do well in school and, all of this, and that we miss things. And so when we're mindful, we start to really show up for life, that we people report more appreciation, more gratitude, more connection to themselves, better relationships, more connection to other people, because they're not missing life. They're in a place of connection and well-being, and it's a much nicer place to live in, actually.
So, let's say in like a school day, I have a bunch of tests and I'm super stressed about something. And
Mhm.
so, how do I just take a moment to think about everything and just relax and, as you say, like be in the present?
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. Mindfulness is not just like you hear about it and you get to be mindful. What I normally do is I would start people learning to meditate. And then once you get the skill of meditation, we can talk about what happens when you do that. You begin to be able to apply it in your life. So once you understand that you're training your attention to stay present, and when your attention wanders, you bring it back, which typically it's on our breathing meditation that we do. When you're in the middle of daily life and you notice your mind going into worst case scenario or replaying something and feeling terrible about it, you can recognize that your mind has done that and you can recenter yourself back into the present moment. And that might be feeling your feet on the ground, taking a breath, just coming back here. There's a really good acronym I like, which is STOP. And it stands for stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. We can try it right now, okay? Because it's really short. So stop, take a breath, and everyone who's listening, just if you can close your eyes, or if you don't want to, doesn't matter. And then observe what's happening inside me right now. My heart's racing, my stomach is clenched, I'm noticing a lot of thoughts, I hear sounds, so it could be outside. Then you just take another breath or two. And then you proceed with more awareness.
So, you've mentioned a lot about awareness and attention. So, how do phones and social media affect that?
Well, on one hand, they're the opposite, right? In the sense of they can take us away from the present moment. They can, I mean, they're not all negative or all positive, but like a lot of times we go for distraction because we don't want to feel whatever we're feeling. Maybe we're feeling bad about something. And so, oh, just get on the phone, or we're bored and we don't want to be with the feeling of boredom. And so we go to our phones. And so to me, this is problematic because we don't learn a skill set of being able to tolerate difficult emotions like boredom or whatever it is that we're feeling inside ourselves. So mindfulness can teach us how to be present with these difficult feelings so that we don't have to rush off and kind of like, modulate the feelings with distraction. So, you know what I'm saying? It's not all one thing, but we have to be careful. I mean, the phones themselves are created to sort of pull you and suck you and addict you into them. So you're fighting an uphill battle.
Let's say in school, a teenager is super bored, and instead of immediately reaching for their phone to scroll on social media, what would you say they should try doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, from a mindfulness perspective, we would say, well, what is boredom? What are you feeling? And so you might kind of check inside. What does boredom feel like? My stomach is clenched. I feel like some heaviness in my chest area. I don't like it. Oh, there's a feeling of not liking. So it's very specific. And as you notice it, sometimes as you notice it, you've just brought curiosity into the experience, and you might not be bored anymore. Like, oh, my body's doing interesting things and my mind is doing interesting things. You might bring a little kindness to yourself. I'm sorry you're bored. Oh, okay. I'm here with myself, right? So just bringing a little kindness. But the thing is, like when we jump out of boredom really quickly, which is what most of us do, it's like we miss a lot of opportunity for being with ourselves and for creativity and whatever comes out. Because sometimes if you stick with it and it's bored and you just let yourself feel it, that's boredom. Oh, well, no big deal. And then something comes out, like you get a creative idea or something inspirational comes. But if we run away from boredom, we never get to that place on the other side. And that's unfortunate. And I see it all the time. I see it with adults, I see it with teens, because you don't have to wait in line and be bored anymore. You don't have, like, you never have to be bored. Our brains need to not be constantly engaged, but to have more spacious times for space and awareness.
Could you expand more on this concept of our brains needing a little time to just process and not be constantly stimulated by our phones or games, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean that's I don't know the research exactly these days because it changes some, but the general idea is that a brain is not like an ongoing processing machine. When we're constantly stimulating, there's not an opportunity for the brain to essentially to rest. And I think what's healthier for the brain is single tasks, a little bit slower with some spaciousness. This is like every like spiritual tradition. It talks about like rest and relaxation and ease and well-being. These are all things that the phone is not, it's not delivering. It's delivering it's not that it's all bad. I really want to be clear. Of course not, and it's maybe delivering like a simile of that, like okay, I played this game for half an hour and I felt like I got peace, but it's not exactly how it's impacting the brain in a healthy way, and the same as like turning it all off. All the teens who are listening right now, I just want to say I get it. The phone is incredibly compelling, but if you can just have a little bit, even if it's an hour a day or 15 minutes a day where you're not doing it, that's my strong recommendation.
I see. So, part of your journey at UCLA began through research on mindfulness and adolescence with ADHD, which I thought was really interesting because so many teenagers today struggle with focus, overstimulation, and attention. What did that experience teach you about how young people think and process the world today?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Well, let me say a little bit about the research and then we can kind of think about it in a bigger picture. But what we did was we taught an 8-week program of mindfulness to teenagers and adults who identified themselves as having ADD or ADHD. And these were people who had a lot of difficulty. So there's different ways in which attention works. With mindfulness, we're training attention. So all your life, probably as a kid, you've been told pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, right? In school, parents, everything. But people don't really tell you how to pay attention. And mindfulness training is a training in attention. And so, as I said before, we usually start people with their breathing. So you notice your breathing, then your attention wanders away, and then you come back to your breathing. So, and then you train it and you train it and you train it. So, what happened with the ADHD adults and teenagers was that they learn to pay attention. And so, there's different types of attention. One is called conflict attention. Conflict attention is when you're trying to pay attention to one thing and something is distracting you. And so if I say pay attention to my face, but I'm distracting you, for people with ADHD, it's really, really hard. That's why people with ADHD, like when you're in school, try to pay attention to the teacher and there's all the stuff going on in the classroom, it's really difficult to focus. When we taught people this attention training, how to stay in the present moment and bring your attention back when it wanders, there was a significant change in conflict attention. I mean, so much so that the scientists looked at it and said, what kind of medication did you put people on? And we said, no, it was meditation, not medication. But so I think your bigger question about it was like, what does this say about people in general? I mean, yes, there's been a significant increase in diagnoses of ADD and ADHD. Is it because people are catching it more thoroughly? Is it because the phones and devices are contributing it to it? Is it living in this crazy world that we live in? I don't know. But there's got to be non pharmacological, not meds, different types of approaches that we can do, because not everybody wants to get on a med for it. And there's, I mean, I don't know, like there's research I've seen where take away the phone for a month or go out in nature for a couple of weeks, and then the kids somehow the attention is better, right? So I have a feeling if you're people who are listening to this, they're thinking, she doesn't get it. We're not going to do that. But I'm just saying, in theory, just letting y'all know. But what I would say is that we can train our attention. Attention is absolutely trainable, and we can change our brain. And this is the science of neuroplasticity that tells us that we're not stuck with what we got. Like our brains can change. They continue to grow, to build new neural pathways up until we die. Essentially, they used to think brains stop developing when we're 25, but they know that's not the case anymore. And so that's why you can look at the brain of like someone who plays the piano, and the part of the brain responsible for finger movement is thicker than an ordinary person. When they look at advanced meditators, they find that the part of the brain responsible for executive functioning, and I'll explain that in a minute, is thicker than people of the same age. So executive functioning is like the CEO of your brain, the executive of your brain, the responsible for delayed gratification, working memory, flexible thinking, those kinds of things. So it grows. Like that's amazing. We can change our brain. So that's all I want to say to y'all is you can grow more distracted, you can grow more ADHD, or you can learn to find more focus, and you can actually change your whole brain and biology. It's really cool.
I think that's really surprising how your attention can actually increase or decrease and how your brain can actually change. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
So, on the practical side, what are some small mindfulness habits that teens can realistically practice, even if they're busy or especially skeptical about meditation?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if they're skeptical, they're probably not going to do it. But if they're open, want to give it a try. I mean, that's the first thing, is give it a try and see if you like it. It's not for everyone. Some people really love it. Not everybody does. But if you do try it, I really would recommend developing even a 5 minute a day daily practice, because this training of attention and all the other things that I mentioned, all the good stuff that comes when we do things regularly with consistency. So I like to recommend, I mentioned we have an app, UCLA Mindful. There's like 3 minute meditations on there, 5 minute meditations, and then longer ones too. But that's a way to do it so you don't have to do it like in silence, because I think it's hard for people to sit there in silence, but you can do it with support. So so that's the first thing, is a daily practice, even if it's just 5 minutes a day. And even if it's not every day, but it's every few days, that's a good thing to do. And then you can practice stop, that acronym that I taught you before. That's a great thing to do in the middle of the day. When you notice that you're feeling anxious, feel your feet on the ground, take a pause, take a few breaths. You can pick an activity and make it a mindful activity. So let's say every time you brush your teeth, you just say, I'm going to just focus on it. I'm not going to be letting myself go out and worry about all sorts of things. I'm just going to notice the movement of my hand and the sounds and the taste, and just staying in the moment. The science shows that people who live in the present moment, or let's say this, when people are in the present moment, they report being happier than when they're spaced out. It's a very interesting research study that shows us this, that they looked at all these people, thousands of people, and they asked them, what are you doing? And is your mind on it? And how are you feeling? And if they were not in the present moment and they were thinking about pleasant things, they were okay. They were fine. But if they were not in the present moment, the two-thirds of the time they're thinking about really unpleasant things or neutral things, they reported not being happy. But the people who reported being in the present moment reported happiness. And even if they were doing things they didn't like. So let's say you hate to like walk your dog or something, but you do it with awareness and connection to your body and feel your feet walking and paying attention, you're going to be happier than sitting there worrying about school.
So, expanding onto these themes of mindfulness, how can young people stay compassionate in such a fast and competitive world?
To themselves or to others?
Both.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a big question because there's many ways that we can cultivate compassion. And I think one of the most important things is always this capacity to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're angry at someone or you feel competitive with someone. Oh, and then also compassionate to yourself. Because one of the things I experience significantly is people don't like themselves or they're really perfectionists and really judgmental. And I just want to encourage you that you can work on that. You're that thing, I think it starts like in your teenage years of like, oh, I'm not good enough, that person's better than me. We don't have to believe those thoughts. We don't have to, well, I didn't use this analogy earlier, but sometimes our thoughts are like trains. It's like we get on the train and the train goes down the station and it's 20 miles down the track and we're like hating ourselves. I'm such a jerk. Why did I do that? And then finally we realize I'm on the thought train. And then we can get off the train and come back to the present moment and take a breath. You don't, my favorite bumper sticker is don't believe everything you think. So, especially when you have thoughts that are like, I'm a bad person, or I'm going to fail, or what if this happens? Any kind of thoughts that lead to feeling bad about yourself or bad about others, just get off the train. Don't get on the train in the first place. And this is what mindfulness can teach us.
So, finally, to end on a happy note, what gives you hope when you work with younger generations?
You guys are amazing. Like you're navigated the pandemic, you navigated this massive, well, I guess for me it's more like technology change. You just grew up in it, but I mean, I have met so many teenagers who are just like brilliant and have so much to offer the world. And I was just, my daughter was just in the play Macbeth this weekend, and there were like 20 kids in the cast and 20 kids supporting it. And it was this phenomenal, they'd worked all year on it. And I just watched the joy and the enthusiasm, and I just thought, they know how to make this world a better place through art and through magic and community. So yeah, I'm very hopeful for you all and your creativity and brilliance.
And that wraps up today's episode on mindfulness. We hope this conversation gave you something to reflect on and maybe even a reason to slow down for a moment in your own day. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.